Good morning, Sunil sir.
Good morning.
Lovely setting, sir. Your studio is so beautiful.
Thank you.
So let's begin. Before we discuss the project which you have chosen to share with us in this film,
Yeah.
we would like to delve into your design process. So please explain to us, please share with us in brief the design process you generally follow in your practice.
Okay. See, basically, before designing any project, we have to. The most important thing is to understand the function of that project or the building. Okay. So it starts with taking the requirements of the client. In short, a brief. Now, it all depends on what kind of projects you are dealing with. If it's a private residence, we normally talk to that family. We have a couple of meetings. We discuss each and everything about their taste and their likings and the requirement. And sometimes we have to add from our side, because it is not necessary that client knows each and everything about the project that he wants to do. So sometimes we have to suggest them, okay, this would be better for you. As a consultant, an architect has to do that. So after all that, we form a brief and then start designing with that. But when it comes to a public building, or normally a government building, then we have to adopt a different process, because in most of the government projects, the user authorities, there are two authorities that we have to deal with. One is the user department, the other is execution authority. For example, suppose if we are doing a cell tax building, now the user department will be cell tax, now it is GST, but execution will be done by PWD or MSRDC. Now in this case, MSRDC was doing, we did one project like that. So in that case, we need to first talk to the user department about their requirements, and then again we have to talk to the execution authority, because from construction point of view, execution authority may have some suggestions or additions or even deletions from the original brief. So in that case, and then after talking to both the authorities, again we have to study what could be an ideal program of space. Like if you are doing a special building, like something like say mental hospital, now we are working on. Now what brief they have given is a very simple brief, that they want to do mental hospital for 1800 beds, patients. Okay.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. So now they may not know what exactly is required for this kind of project. Then in that case, we study through books, like we have some books like Times New Standard or New For, they are all Bibles. We go through that, we understand what is an ideal project of that typology, and then we have to create a brief ourselves and then present it to the government and saying that this is what we have to build, and then we start building that. So that requirement, taking requirement and creating that space program is the most important thing initially. And then the next most important thing is that studying the site in terms of its topography or in terms of its climate, because we believe that it has to be climate responsive architecture. If it has to be sustainable, it becomes sustainable automatically if it is climate responsive. So in that case, then we study the site, what is the topography, whether the site is flat or is sloping. If it is sloping, how could we deal with that slope without cutting or filling much, to make it more economical or sustainable. And then we start with the basic zoning and circulation. That's how we start with the designing. And then once we do zoning and circulation, we start thinking about, we actually do the planning and then start thinking about building envelope, where you have to really go as per the climate, because we believe that your building envelope has to be climate responsive. You cannot treat all the sides in the same manner. Like north may have a little bit of more glass, because north doesn't have radiation from the sun, but at the same time west and south we have to really treat them such a way that the radiation has to be avoided, at the same time the breeze should be allowed. So it's very tricky working in a tropical country like India. So then we design building envelope accordingly, and then the evolution of architectural form is done, like form is evolved through all this process. So this is while designing. Then of course then we have couple of presentations with the client, and then taking their suggestions and revising. So this process goes on with 2-3 iterations. We finalize a design, and then what comes next is that getting it approved from the statutory bodies like municipal corporation or sometimes councils, and then making actual working drawings for the contractor. That people call it GFCs, good for construction. But before that, we have to then again we deal with a project from architecture to everything. We give comprehensive services under one roof, like architectural, interior, landscape, structural, MEP, everything under one roof. So again then we have to, but we appoint this consultant from our side and we take their input. Okay, then after taking their input, then we create their working drawings, and then what comes next is appointment of the contractor to execute that project. So appointment of contractor is done, it depends upon what kind of project you're dealing with. If it's a private residence, we normally choose contractors from our own list, or sometimes the client has somebody, it's not nowadays, everybody has somebody who's a close relative client is a civil engineer who is the contractor. Something happens like that, and then through very private discussions and meetings, we appoint a contractor. But when it comes to a government project, again it's a long process, then we have to call for public tenders, and the contractors have to be given at least 2 months time, and they fill the tenders, and this process goes on. Again, we have to be very cautious about having a good quality contractor, because when it's a public tender, just to get that tender, people can quote anything. But then we have some qualifying criteria. We have to set up some qualifying criteria and see to that only a good contractors come for the competition. So through that process, we appoint contractor for public buildings. Once the contractor is appointed, then what happens is like we have to have periodical site visits, where again we have a system where we have some written forms, like at what stage what should be checked. Like what happens is somebody goes randomly on site and look at things here and there and says, oh, work is going slow, or work is going fast, or is right or wrong. Rather than that, we have forms, like if somebody is visiting at excavation level, what he has to check, there's a checklist. So whether I go or my office person goes, my civil engineer goes, they go through all that checklist so that everything gets checked automatically. So we have made a system for that also. And when we work with bar chart, and because we have to understand that when the project has to be completed in a stipulated time, normally the government projects have to be done in a stipulated time, we have to make a bar chart, activity charts. The contractor has to start, which activity has to start when, and when he has to finish, and how should be the overlapping of activities. Okay, in that case, when we visit and when we say that this activity is going slow, again there has to be a base for that. What is the base for that is like we have to recommend him what should be the workforce employed to carry out that activity. Like if I say that your masonry work is going slow, I will check in the bar chart that what recommended workforce was 50 masons and he has employed only 25. Then I can say that it is going slow. Just by looking at it, I won't understand that. So these are some methods, where we really strictly observe this and strictly follow this method for site visits. And
so wonderful, so efficiently done.
We have to do that, because if the work has to be done exactly as per your expectations or drawings or the designs, before starting execution on site, we see to that we have couple of meetings with client or with contractor, his team, with consultants teams, our own team, and we explain them the concept of the project, because what we believe is that about that project, what is the design concept has to be understood by everybody. Everybody should have the same mindset about the project. So then you can achieve that goal. Everybody should feel that he's creating something which I mean, what I mean to say is like they should also think the same way that the designer, as a designers, we think. So we see to that everybody understands what he or she is doing on site, and then you can get the result.
That's wonderfully explained, sir. So now, as you said, after the client's brief, you work on the plan, and then with contractors, with clients, meetings, and everything happens. Internally, in your studio, how does the process go? Like, at what stage is your team involved or your associates involved, and how does that go? And I heard you have your own engineering department. So, can you just explain internally in the studio how this process goes after you get the client's brief?
Internally, what happens is, like, when we get a project, first we see whether we can really take it at that time. And sometimes if you're too busy, we simply say no to the project, because we don't believe in just taking a number of projects, and if you're not able to provide good
But
service.
that decision you take alone as a principal?
No.
Or
We discuss with our core team. We have a core team. So we discuss what is the workload now, whether we can really spare time for this.
So you believe in taking everyone together,
Yeah,
creating.
you have to understand that architecture is a teamwork. It's not like, I have always been saying this. Though architecture is an art, and people say it's a mother of all arts, but what is the difference between this art and the other arts? Like, if you want to do a canvas painting and start nurturing that hobby, you go to the market, buy some canvases, buy paints, and start doing it immediately. For architecture, in architecture, you cannot do that. The minimum requirement is that you must have a client, okay, and then you must have a good team. It's a teamwork basically, because what you do, in your studio also, and even on site also, because whatever you do design, whatever you have in mind, it has to be executed on site. We just simply don't design sculptures. They are inhabited sculptures. If at all they are to be called sculptures. So I think team is very important. So we have a team meeting, and then we decide, okay, we'll take this project. Now we see comparatively, we have some teams, like, there are team leaders and people working under those teams. And basically our structure is that we have 3 directors. Me, one of our director is Architect Anuja Pandit, and then we have one director from engineering department, Sanjay Patil. Because for us, engineering department is very, is important. This reason is that we have been working for cooperative sector since long. Because originally this studio belongs to Kolhapur, and we had office there. Even today we have it. So we have been working for cooperative sectors, where they expect everything from architect's office, like estimation, quantity takeoff, contractors billing, certification of contractors bills, and everything. Okay, and that requires engineering department, because in that area then 20 years back, this service was not outsourced. Okay. So we used to have even structural designing in-house before, which we recently stopped. And then even for the government projects, now if you see, government projects, we require engineering department like anything, because we have to give them quantities. We have to attend some meetings where sometimes it is more technical than architectural. Like, suddenly somebody from the government will ask you, what would be the quantity of cement required for this entire project and all that. So civil engineers are closely associated with mostly projects. So when we take a project, now coming back to the process, when you take a project, you first decide, okay, we can take this project. Then our design director, and we decide that this project will be done by this team, because comparatively this team is supposed free comparatively. So we take that team leader, and then right from day one, right from the first meeting with the client, we involve our team. We have a process in our Excel format. In your studio, and the team has to follow that. Like, when we take client's brief, what all should be covered. When we do site survey, what all should be covered. So all that is there in the Excel format, in the software. We have to follow that, and we follow it. So then,
so your entire team is on the same page with the principal architect
yes.
about the progress of the project.
Exactly. And then when we actually start designing, then of course we all start working together. So the concept we work on, and then it's not just overnight, like I did something and I told them, no, this is what it is, and just do it. It never happens like that. We do something and then we discuss, no, this can be done like this, and then a lot of discussions go on, a lot of meetings go on, and then it comes to some form. And we don't believe in giving options, because I strongly believe that any architect for any project for that particular site, how can you have 2 options? How can you say this is also good and that is also good? From him it has to be the best option. So we go on discarding, okay, this is not okay, this is not okay, and then we come to our best. Now while discussing with the client, while having meeting with the client, that what we say our best might get changed because of some things. But then that's a process. Then it goes on changing, and ultimately the final output may be different than what we had initially presented. I even while giving a presentation to DCM for a government project, I told him that, sir, you can't have options from one architect. For that you have to have options from other architects, and it happens like. But then when there is a competition, there are a lot of other. Actually, we are happy when there is a competition because client has other options to compare. So he will not come behind us to go for number of options.
So open-minded and so fantastic. So, do you also encourage your subordinates or your juniors to come up with ideas at your stature? Don't they get scared of suggesting something or contradicting your design in some way?
Most of the young architects, they just simply don't work for the salary because they want to do something creative, and they also want credit for that. They want to be recognized for his or her creativity. So this is there. So and we don't want to simply enforce things on them, impose things on them rather. So what we do initially, when we start designing, we have everybody has a freedom for at least first 1 or 2 weeks, that process is going on. Whoever comes up with something idea, we accept it, we see what is the feasibility of that. But what happens is, when you're dealing with a bigger project, most of the times these young architects, they have to really have experience of understanding what is the volume. We have something called volumetric analysis in our office. That's actually a chemistry term, volumetric analysis. But we call it volumetric analysis because we have to understand what can be the with the site and with the square feet built up area, that proposed built up area, what could be the volume of that project, whether we really have to go for high rise, or we can have just G+1 structures, or we can have just simply ground structures. You have to understand that before designing, so that it becomes easier. Otherwise what happens is, like, people keep on working on something, and after a month they come to know that, oh, it's not, they keep something in mind that we'll do this, and they come to know later on that no, it's not happening because of some things, like built up is more, or we cannot really have so much of space. So we do that volumetric analysis. So we have idea this project is going to be like this project is going to be high rise, or yes, this project is going to be a campus planning with just G+1. That first you have to understand before designing, and then it is easier. So while doing that process, you really don't come to know who is doing what and who is generating the idea. It goes on with the discussions. Sometimes now collector office, when we design, it was an urgency, and we created a form, and then with one just sketch, but then to put that into actual drawings, it took a lot of efforts, a lot of meetings also, and discussions. So
thank you so much for sharing your overall process with us. Moving on, so which project have you chosen to share with us in today's interview, which will help us delve into your design process?
I have selected this collector office Pune because that is talk of the town now, so everybody wants to know about it. And I did lot of presentations in Pune, but they were before it was completed. So I think I will take this opportunity to explain process.
That would be wonderful. Also will be, and what was the idea about this building?
There's a different story about this building. We were doing BVIP Circuit House project, which was our first project of government completed with 5-star rating of GRIA. It's a green building. It got a couple of national awards, and it was really appreciated in government sector because none of PWD buildings that time had actually got this 5-star rating from GRIA as a green building. So after doing that, while we were completing that, the collector office project was already in the process of getting various options from the architects.
Can I interrupt you here?
Yeah.
When you got the green building, was that your first project for which you got it?
Yeah, it was my first project. See, we have been doing green buildings, but getting it stamped as 5-star rating from GRIA is first time. Because normally what happens is, we do green buildings for cooperative sector. They say, okay, it's a green building, but we don't go for any authority to stamp it as a green. But then for government, unless it is stamped, it is not proven. So here it was our first project which we did, but actually we did couple of projects which were quite appreciated as green building. Like we did one project just in 2009, winery at Akluz. That's a green building.
The Fratelli wines.
Fratelli wines. It has got two national awards as a green building. So that time they were also getting different designs for collector office, but we were not actually part of it. But when we finished this circuit house, then I received a call from DCM, then Deputy CM, that we are stuck up with something in this collector office. Can you give us one option? What they were stuck up was like already design was done. Many designs were done before, but one was finalized. But then it was that design was forcing them to have some tree cutting. The issue was that they had to cut actually more than 100 trees. So they wanted to save it. So can you come up with some alternative? He requested us. Then we said we will try on that, and we did it. Then because of that, we got that project that we could save their trees.
But again, when you first saw the actual site, what were your initial thoughts? Initially, when you first saw the site, what thoughts came to you first? Secondly, what were your thoughts about the relationship of that building with its context?
See, when I first visited the site, I was scared because site had 199 big trees, huge trees, which were most of them were more than 50 years old, and people used to come there for morning walks. You know that in India, I don't know whether it's a problem or it's a good thing. Most of the people go for morning walks in the government buildings, government campuses, because they really don't have any good parks. So now cutting those trees would be menace. So my first, I got engrossed in thinking how can I, evolve this form without cutting these trees. And of course, as far as the context is concerned, these days if you see context that we believe in contemporary vernacular, like it means that you can use some vernacular ethos, but it has to be contemporary now. You have to go with the time. I strongly believe that every architecture has its own era and every era has its own architecture. So architecture has to go with its time. Okay, what was built by Britishers 100 years back, now we can't repeat the same. Yeah, it has to talk about its time. So we had to go for contemporary structure using vernacular ethos, because what in our climate, what was suitable was done by our ancestors in our places. So that is vernacular ethos, like maybe jalis, or that time they were courtyards and all that. So you can follow that. So that was our thought process initially when we visited the site.
So we are very excited to know the process of how you went about responding to the client's brief for this project. Please take us through your design journey from concept to completion, right from the client's brief till handover.
Yeah. So about this collector office project, we had a brief which was not complete because they themselves were not really sure of what all departments to be. So we had to really work on brief with talking to various departments of the government, and which is going to be there, which is not going to be in that campus, all that. And when the design process started, when we actually visited the site, if you remember that previous collector office was all small buildings in the campus, which were old buildings, in stone, and they were very small, like 5,000 square feet, 4,000 square feet. Now their requirement was about 200,000 square feet, 2 lakh square feet of construction. So previously it was inconvenient for them to operate from one building to another building. So they wanted to have one single building and all the departments under one roof. So the main problem was that there were a lot of trees in between these structures. Okay, and now we had to really, it was a big challenge of saving those trees, because those trees were big. They're more than 50 years old. 199 trees on that campus, out of which 120 trees were getting hampered if we had done something conventional, which they also had tried before, like going with basement and all, because that project required more than 200 car parkings. It's a 2 lakh square feet of a project. So now just imagine, so conventionally one had to go for a basement. So if you go for the basement, of course then it will force tree cutting. Okay, then we have to cut the trees. So first thing we thought was to avoid basement, and we decided to design something along with the trees, maintaining the trees, and along with the spaces which will be emptied by demolishing the structures. And this is how we started working on it. When the structures were demolished, we found out which are the chunks of the spaces where we could have our wings, our offices, where there will be minimum tree cuttings. And then this is how it goes on, as I showed. Then we went for G+5 structure and no basement. we created parking building as a multi-story parking, and that was again sustainable because the officers can park their vehicles on the same floor and just simply walk without using elevators. So these ideas started coming, and then we started working on it. There was one building porch which was quite marked by heritage department. That one small building was heritage building, that's what they say, and they had a condition that we had to either retain that porch as it is, or rebuild it by coding each and every stone, removing it, and again build it somewhere. But they wanted their concept, their brief was very simple. Their instruction was that they wanted the same porch to be used for the new building. But then it was illogical, because new building would have been would be about 2 lakh square feet, and that porch, which was originally for just 5,000 square feet of 6,000 square feet building, which was small, which could accommodate just one vehicle, how could we use it for such a huge building? So we suggested them that we will use this porch somewhere as a monument, but we will not make this as our porch, and they agreed. So we started with that, and then we talked to various departments, we understood their circulation, and then finally the form is evolved, and then we thought of having those fins, because most of the office areas were facing west, so we wanted to cut radiation. It has to be building climate responsive building envelope, so we worked on that. We worked on levels of parking, where what could be convenient. Then they wanted to have one big hall, DPDC hall they call it, for meetings of the character, which we had to design on top of that. Again, it's a structure which was going through the floors below. So there were a lot of structural implications also. So when we evolve the form and give a presentation to the client, in first go client, they like the design, because it was solving their lot of issues. Most important issue was tree, that out of 120 trees which were supposed to be cut by their proposal, we saved almost 112.
And most of them because you cancelled the basement.
Yes. Only 8 trees were transferred. Like you can say 8 trees were hampered. Rest of the trees we could save very well. So all their issues were sorted out. And again, the form was evolved such a way that it was looking like a monumental building already. So we went on doing that.
So just take us through the zoning and the circulation of the building.
See, as I explained there, there are 2 wings, 2 office wings. Okay, you enter a big plaza. Now that plaza, again I have to tell you that when you design a government project, they normally don't allow bigger waiting spaces. Rather than saying allow, we can't have a lot of waiting spaces inside. So these kind of plazas, which is not part of the original brief, help for the people coming there to wait there. Or collector office is something where people come from all over the district, and as you know, the way it functions, sometimes people have to spend entire day there. They come with their lunch boxes, and they are in the campus throughout the day. They have their lunch box in the campus itself. So this plaza, along with these landscaped areas, could help people to do all these things, waiting, having their lunches and all that. And again, this plaza, which is separated by 3 wings. 2 of the wings are office buildings. One wing is parking building, and this parking building is connected to these 2 wings by bridges. And again, these 2 wings are connected to each other by bridges. And the central plaza, which is about 10,000 square feet, which has again a top floor. On the top, there is collector's wing. So it has also got a small puncture, which is kind of a courtyard. So it's very easy circulation. There are 2 vertical cores in every wing. By both the cores, you can go to the collector's floor, and then all these floors are also connected. There is one vertical core in the parking building as well. So you can either park your vehicle at the same floor and just simply walk, or even if you park at other floors, you can come to that floor by elevator. So the circulation was very well worked out, and it was easy to function.
Thank you, sir. So just tell us about the natural light, how you have brought into this building.
So natural light, it has got, if you see these fins, behind these fins there is complete, all windows are there. We don't have dead walls. and the windows are kept open. And in each wing there is a central courtyard. The central courtyard has a polycarbonate dome, and which has got this rotary ventilators, extractors. They extract the air and stack effect is generated. So I am talking about ventilation first. So the wind which comes, which is sucked from the windows, processed through the offices, and then finally it extracted through those ventilators. So there is a good natural ventilation. As far as light is concerned, of course, behind those fins is complete all windows, glazing is there. So there's a light from all over.
And after sundown, the lighting for the building.
After sundown, of course, then your
So
conventional
what
lighting is
kind
there.
of lighting?
See, we have used all LEDs mostly to save thing. And I forgot to mention, this building is we have generated 100% electricity on the campus itself. It is a zero energy project. We have done solar. We have installed solar panels to generate the entire electricity requirement that is required for the campus.
Wonderful, sir. What kind of research? It sounds very difficult, the research for this kind of a project, because here people, the users will be public people, and plus your clients are the government. So what kind of research you have to do to gain domain knowledge before starting this project?
See, for any, not just this particular project, but any special building when you do, first thing is you have to do is that you have to go through the books and understand how could it be an ideal building, and then do case studies. The case studies in India will never give you the idea of how it could be ideally, because we have shortage of funds most of the times and shortage of areas. So case studies could not be perfect. So we do case studies to understand what not to do, okay, and then we refer books to understand what to do. And in this particular project, the main challenge was to understand what are the various departments, how they interact with the collector's office, with the collector, and there are also codes, to take some hearings. So those halls are there. So how the circulation would be, who takes the hearings, and all this, there is a hierarchy of people from collector, deputy collector, resident collector, all these people, how they would be sitting where, how close they should be, how functional we can make it so that their energy is saved. Collector is sitting somewhere, and somebody who meets the collector every day sits in a different wing, different floor. Just imagine the kind of energy he has to unnecessary waste while every time going to the collector. So we took care of all that. We studied the circulation and pattern of their function, and we saw to that that energy is saved.
So that heritage structure, the porch, what convinced them? How did you convince them to continue with that and use it in the?
See, when we did this, obviously, one single statement got them convinced, because just imagine that 5,000 square feet building's porch and 2 lakh square feet of new building. How it would gel, and they understood that yes. Then how to save it? I said, we will make it a monument. Let people come and respect it. That yes, this was here before, and that worked well. And when we gave them presentation, we gave that, of course, that building, that porch, which is now we call as that sculpture, has got a prominent place. As soon as you enter, first thing you see is that only. So, and people go there to understand it was like that before. So they got convinced, because it was not just saved, but it was given that it was enhanced like this in this form. So what message we have written down is that that is a tree, okay, that's an environment. It represents environment. So let's join hands to protect our environment.
Wonderful.
So we are actually joining hands to create that tree.
Super.
So that mural is really appreciated, and people who come there, they first look at that. They are happy to see all that. Actually, this structure, initially when we designed this entire structure, we wanted to go for pre-stressed structure, which could make our RCC elements slick. But because of some limitations with the PWD, because pre-stressed structures also require a lot of maintenance, afterwards. So with the conscious decision, we decided, along with the PWD, we decided not to go for pre-stressed structures. But then we made it a conventional RC structure. But we had to, now there was one big challenge. that the bridges which were connecting two wings, they were about 22 meters in span. Now doing that conventionally, it would have been very heavy RCC element, and not just for aesthetics but also structurally it would have looked bad. So we thought of using composite structure there. We use that particular element is completely designed in structural steel, and where the floor itself becomes a structural member rather than having a floor and then having one beam supporting it, then it would have been very heavy. And we design in such a way that the railing and the floor, the base of that, it becomes a structural element, and it also becomes aesthetical element. So you see those sleek bridges which are spanning 22 meters, but they are still sleek. So we could achieve that. So it's overall it became a composite structure, somewhere steel and then RCC. Mainly if you see, this is all about using board masses in a government sector. If you see that top mass, which is a collector's office, which is again 8 meters cantilevered, which itself is also a big thing. So we saw to that the proportions are achieved, because when we do this structure, and the top story is up to floors. When we do these structures, the most important thing is how we achieve those proportions. Otherwise, everything is lost. So rather than depending on extra cosmetic treatment like claddings and all that, we saw to that, we normally do it, saw to that the proportions of the masses are so good that building looks aesthetically pleasant. There was one more condition by Heritage Department, that the stone which will be available after demolishing the structure, the same stone of those old structures to be used in the new building. So we decided to use that, and if you see collector's office ground story, it is completely built in those stones. So we use those stones from the demolition of those old structures.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful.
So that itself makes this facade very interesting, because we don't look at, there is no term called elevation. Elevation is just a technical name of a drawing. Okay, so we see to that our building is good in 3D. We don't treat elevations, we treat masses. So if you see, it's a layered kind of massing. Like we have a ground structure which is in stone, then we have some very number of floors which are treated with those fins which looks like a fragile massing for looks, and then we have a floating mass on top of that. So that composition of all these masses itself made that building very beautiful.
Absolutely. And not only beautiful, it gives a filigree kind of a notion to the whole building.
Yes.
It's amazing. And that's your.
And if you observe, there is no defined porch to this structure. And they accepted it. Initially, they were really very keen on having porch, but they accepted it.
What a beautiful sciography planned actually.
Yes, it is.
Amazing.
We do a lot of climatic analysis. Now we are doing this new building for PCMC Administrative Head Office. Again, there is a huge cutout in the massing. Of course, that is facing north, but sometimes we also think because of the distance, that size of the cutout, the light may come in from east in the morning and from west in the evening. So what to do? How to treat those inside faces? Because where you might think that there will not be radiation, but radiation will be there. So now what we are doing, now it's in design stage. What we are doing is like we are now working on it, like what could be different scenarios throughout the year. Okay, what will be in Jan, 2-3 days in Jan, Feb, all months, and then we will take a call on that, how much it gets hampered and what treatment we have to do there.
What a breeze solar you can.
You have to do that. Yeah. See, if you see VIP circuit house, that central courtyard, we worked a lot on that for its proportion. Like our main idea was that it should remain shaded in most of the time of the year, because that acts as an additional waiting space. Any government project in India, we have to provide these courtyards for additional waiting spaces, not just for landscape or water bodies which help to add microclimate to the building. But then it should remain shaded, otherwise nobody will use it. So we really worked on it. If the width is more, how sun will be. If the width is less, how sun will be. In which month, how sun will be. And then we took a call on that this should be the width to this height.
You mentioned using the north light, and what did you do on the south side to keep out the heavy?
Climatically, if you see, south side has to be treated with, horizontal louvers. because sun is inclined, not much, but sun is, the inclination is very angular, like you get sun from top, more from top, but you cannot have the same treatment to west, because in west sun is inclined a lot, so horizontal fins are not going to save you. So there you need to use vertical fins. So if you see that our VIP Circuit House is a perfect example of climate responsive facades. If you see west side, we have a components room which has got vertical fins because it's facing west. South side we have a combination of both. So I think each side has to be treated as per the climate. And north side doesn't have radiation, but there is ambient heat, which you have to take care of by using specific glass there. One thing that north side just keep it full glass. No, it doesn't work. Ambient heat you have to consider.
What kind of intertwining of nature has been done in this building? Is there the surrounding, the greenery?
See, it has been, if you study, it has been proved scientifically that if you're working, if you look at the nature while working in the offices, it increases your work efficiency. And
superb example.
That we have done in most of the government offices projects now. Here, our idea was that more of openness through the big spaces, through different wings, as well as in every wing there is a courtyard and openness, so that the space flows in. And if you do good landscape there enough, then obviously you keep looking at the greenery while working. So our harmony with the nature concept is same. It is not just for any private residence, but also for buildings where people are working for hours and hours. How we can how we can relax their mind by just giving them view of some nature. That's why we have been following this philosophy since long, for past almost more than 20 years.
Amazing, sir. You are adding so much value to public buildings. So many firsts which were non-existent earlier. The plazas which you introduced, the self-sufficiency in electricity, and the interesting messages through murals, and so many other firsts. Can you share with us the material palette and the color palette used for this entire structure?
Now, collector office you are talking about. This building, if you see, we have used stone from the old buildings debris. Then we have used GI fins, because fins we wanted to do in RCC, it was not working out economically. They were becoming heavy, so we used GI and they're stuffed with some paper also. Then what we have done is, like, we wanted to have exposed concrete on top of that, but then again there was a ceiling, because services are the most important thing. So we used their metal also, aluminum composite panel we have used, but we used very simple white color, because our experience is that this dark aluminum panels, they get faded. We didn't, it was not our original option, but there was no option to rather than painting, we thought of using it, because what we have thought of is, like, when we do a government building, we have to go for permanent finishes, so that there is no hassle of painting them every 3 years, because you never know when they paint it, it could be a different shade after that, and maintenance has to be reduced. So our main idea is to reduce the maintenance, so use the materials which can be there for longer time.
So again, this reflects your maxim, in which you believe that building should be contemporary, yes, but with borrowed vernacular elements and vernacular materials. This building also stands a proof for that motto. Thank you so much, sir. But before we cut off, I know this is a topic for another interview, but how excited are you about your project, the government building coming up, which is so talked about everywhere? Can you tell us, just in brief, how excited are you?
I'm really excited about it, because it's different, I'm telling you, but we worked a lot on that. It had to be a monumental building, but without, it has to be, again, a simplicity has to be carried out in that building. It is one of the largest corporation in India, and the building should depict that, that yes, it is. So it's interesting to have, and again, when COVID was there, we realized one thing, that now we cannot have those congested entrance lobbies and waiting spaces, because in COVID people were reluctant to even stand near each other. This building is designed such a way that even if 1,000 people enter at a time, they will not find it congested. So again, the entrance lobby in the form of huge garden and plaza. Then this is a tall building about 86 meters. So it will stand now. Again, it's representing the new generation architecture in because our area recently we started building high-rise buildings. So it's a high-rise building with different wings. There were various challenges where we had to have couple of vertical cores, and again it's a complete it is going completely with our philosophy of harmony with the nature. Like our architecture spaces are in harmony with the nature. So there is architectural space, then landscape, then space landscape. So it's an array of open spaces and built masses with landscape in between. So I'm very excited to just.
We all are excited to see the completion of this dream you're drawing, sir. We're so proud of you. So thank you so much for sharing your entire design process for this project so wonderfully.
You're welcome.
It's going to go a long way in inspiring our viewers and giving an insight into such a brilliant studio. So my question to you is, which is that one most favorite thing in this project of yours?
As I discussed, as I explained in the process, there was I talked about that porch. That porch which was supposed to be used as porch for the new building, which we convinced the authority that we will make it a monument, and that one thing is something which I really am very happy about, that the way I implemented their conditions. It was a condition by Heritage Department.
So what does this project actually deliver? What are the great moments?
This project delivers work efficiency. Believe me, people are working there now. It was I talked to collector many times about how people are doing it. People are happy working there. That's what they talk about. They talk it out, and that's something which gives me a lot of satisfaction. That I could make a building which makes people happy to work in it. Okay, because it has got absolute natural light in each and every square inch of the space. There is very good cross ventilation. So people are happy working it, and you get good work efficiency. That is the main achievement of this project.
So what is your overwhelming emotion about this project?
That is something which what you saw, that huge span of 20 meters, where we had a lot of discussions with PWD. Chief engineer wanted to have some columns there, and I was really losing it, that concept. But somehow I could just save it and do it as per our original design. That's something which is like that has really remained as a story to my heart.
So what was your journeyman moment in this project? A master stroke or a eureka moment for you?
Collector sitting on top of that, because collector office is a powerhouse of the district, and he is the ruler of the district. So we wanted to always give him that feel. And when I talked to the collector after the completion, he exactly talked about the same thing. And about collector office, we are happy as designers, because what our concept was is felt by the users, and they talk it out. So this is something which is giving us a lot of satisfaction.
Amazing. So do you think this project is very close to the kind of perfection for you?
See, what happens is, like, when you use the word perfection, it's difficult to say that, because what happens is, like, if I visit that project now, I think I could have done something even better than that. There's always a thing like with the designer, So as time goes, the designer, at least me, I don't, find my previous projects perfect, because I always think that I could have done something more perfect than what I had done then. But as far as the function is concerned, as far as the occupant satisfaction is concerned, I think it's quite good. I'm nearing the perfection.
How close is this project to the finished project to your initial plan, initial layout?
Quite close. Only thing is that we changed little bit in the building envelope, in the fins. Like initially they were horizontal fins, but then we changed it to vertical because there were some issues about birds and all that. But I think with that minor thing, it still gives the same effect. Rest of the project was executed exactly as it was designed.
So it's a bit hard for me to say, but there is a bit of engineering in many of your projects, especially public buildings. Certain elements in your buildings, they come again, Maybe delineation. I've seen the way you use lines, straight lines, clean lines, integration of engineering, as we just mentioned, craftsmanship, maybe of the bridges and the galleys, giving it lightness, the facilitation of natural light. You are amazing with bringing in natural light through fenestration or coats. The handwriting is seen in projects. Your thought process behind this?
See, first thing is that your first question was that is more of engineering elements that we incorporate in our buildings. But you have to understand that architecture is what is architecture? It's creativity in engineering, of course. Okay, because that makes a lot of difference. You know, if you have sound engineering knowledge, you can really create very beautiful structures. So our thought process, we don't think about all these things when we start designing the project. Our design philosophy is harmony with the nature. That when it comes to designing spaces. So when we start designing spaces, we first think how we can have that interaction of exterior and outdoor and indoor so well. You know, how we can really have that flow of outdoor to indoor, indoor to outdoor. First we think about that. First we design the spaces. While doing that, as we believe that there has to be interaction among the spaces itself, all those double or triple heighted volumes are created. You know, and then for that you need engineering to cater to your architecture requirements actually. Now, if I have to give exact example of the same project, now see, we first created wings as I showed you in the process. Okay, now one of that wing was parking and two wings were office buildings. Now we had designed a third wing, which fourth wing rather, on top of that, which was actual the collectorate office, the collector's office. Okay, so the plaza which is created required lot of knowledge of engineering because it was almost 22 meters by height 24 more than 24 meters. So see, we worked on that. Without engineering, if we had done it with very conventional methods with lot of columns and beams grills there, it would have completely spoiled the effect of space. So we use engineering for our architectural creativity.
Even in the skin of your structures, many times you can see excellent engineering integrated. So why designing public buildings is found appealing by eminent architects world over to design?
There are two things. See, one is like if you see architectural character of any town, any city or any country is always governed by the public buildings of that place. Like for example, when you think about Chandigarh, what comes to your mind? All those secretariat and all those public buildings. When you think about even Bangalore or when you think about any other city, what comes to your mind is public buildings first. Okay, so it is an opportunity for the designer to govern the architecture style of that place. And of course, these government projects or these public buildings are normally they are monumental. Okay, and it deals with masses basically. And for example, like if you do a private residence, it caters only to a particular family. But doing a public building, you are catering to the entire society, and that happiness the designer gets. And of course, above all is that you get good recognition. These buildings are known for years, and your stamp will always be there, which will be appreciated by more occupants.
So we all are very proud of your body of work,
Thank
what
you.
you're doing in public sector also. Final question, sir. So how do you measure the success of a completed project?
Like, as I told you that it is only the occupants or the users who tell us about our success. So if he's happy, sometimes what happens is when you design a private residence, something like that, they may not understand why it is good, but they understand it is good. And the reason is not those materials that we used. The reason is the proportion of the space, the flow of space from one to another, all these things, But what matters is the client satisfaction. While doing public buildings also, you get responses that you really don't have to do anything to understand whether that building is good or bad. You come to know through many sources. One of the sources, people like you, that today that project is being interviewed, taken for interview because of that. So normally, it is the occupant or user's satisfaction which can tell us about the success of that project.
Beautifully spoken, sir. Thank you so much, Sunil, sir.